Welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA. It's Sunday night. Joining me from Naples, Florida, is our front office insider, Bobby Marks. Hi, Bobby.
Hey, Brian. How are you?
Good. Can you believe what was more shocking today? Jose Alvarado of the New Orleans Pelicans putting up 38 points on the Nuggets, who, by the way, the Nuggets are the 38 points from. It was not a good weekend for the Nuggets, but 38 points from Jose Alvarado, the most points ever scored by an undrafted player in the NBA.
I commented right when it was going on. I said, you might as well guarantee the rest of that contract for this year. Can you believe too that they have him under contract? And I understand at the time, the guy wasn't making any money. He was on a two-way, but this year's partial, next year's non-guaranteed. It's a team option, and it's one of these baseball type contracts that we see out there. Like, right? Like the pitcher will be like 34 when he hits free agency and be able to cash in here. But I think I'm more shocked that Willie Green took him out at 38, although he had two attempts to get to 40, that he took him out of the game there.
So I talked to Andrew Lopez, who covers the Pelicans. He was at the game, and he was chasing 40 for several possessions. Yeah. He pointed out Zion's never scored 40 in a game. But apparently he's told me that the Pelicans, the last few possessions, like they were moving screens like crazy. They were trying like everything in their playbook to try to get him to that 40th point. He couldn't.
There was multiple clear outs.
1-4 flat for Jose Alvarado. He didn't run 1-4 flat when he was in high school, I'm sure.
No.
So AD scores 55 in DC tonight. The Lakers win again. He was 55 and 17. Bobby, I have his stats for the last 10 games. He's averaging 35 points, 16 rebounds, shooting 65%. 65%. Part of the reason why he's on this hot streak is he has knocked off shooting threes and has been getting to the line, attacking, super aggressive, averaging 10 free throws a game in those 10 games. He's shooting 88% at the line. By the way, when he does shoot the three, which he's only averaging like 1.5 a game, he's shooting like 45% on those. But he's kind of morphed over his game. But more than anything, like he's just being viciously aggressive. And I've talked to some folks around the team. I've talked to some folks around AD. His back was bothering him early in the season, and it's better now. Only he knows, that he missed a game last week because of a calf injury. So, he's healthy, but only he knows why all of a sudden he's being just vicious, like the Anthony Davis, peak Anthony Davis. And it's made a humongous difference. The Lakers started 2-10. They win in DC tonight. Now, Bradley Beal only played 3 minutes, had a hamstring injury, but good luck beating any team when a guy scores 55. LeBron had a good night too, and they're 10-12. They started 2-10. They've gone 8-2 since, Bobby. I don't love to talk about the Lakers, but you got to give them their due.
Yeah, you could say, hey, look at their schedule. They've had some soft ones there with San Antonio, but they've beaten teams they're supposed to beat. It's funny, Brian. I watched, you watched the Friday night game against Milwaukee, and both. Probably one of the better regular season games that we've seen in a long time. And both teams towards the end are, everyone's grabbing at their shorts because they are dead tired here. And
LeBron, I don't know if I've ever seen LeBron that tired, and I've seen LeBron tired a lot. Well,
and that was the thing I said to myself after they won. All right, what is the carryover effect going to be? They didn't play. Milwaukee had to go to Charlotte the next night, and basically, there was no Holiday, Middleton, or Giannis in that game. And I'm thinking, all right,
they still won.
And still won, yeah. And Lakers are in, they got to play the Wizards on Sunday. So, what's the carryover effect going to be? Is there going to be not really a hangover, but from a fatigue standpoint?
Yeah.
And how Anthony played, Sunday night, there wasn't. And you're right. In that Milwaukee game, I think he attempted 1-3 until 3 minutes left in the fourth, where he hit, two back to back here. And I'm working on this document for, I think, December 15th, 16th, where we take front office questions, what teams have to ask themselves. And we kind of separate players with trade value, who has the value, controllable contracts. And originally, like I had AD in my player was with trade value, and I've taken him off that because I'm putting him in that basically off the board category, right? Like, LeBron because of the extension. But there are players there like Jason Tatum that we consider them kind of off the board, untouchable here. And I don't know if this team was sputtering and they're 4-18, then you're probably thinking, you know what, we might have to, try to split that Davis contract up into something here. But man, they're playing as good as they've played. They've kind of just know their roles, right? Like, your two alphas. You've kind of figured out the Westbrook situation here, and then you're getting
that was a huge getting him to accept that role because he's now become a plus player. I was thinking that he was so bad in the starting lineup and he wasn't going to accept that role. It looked like that for a really long time. I mean, he was, doing whatever when he got sent to the bench, and him becoming a plus player, not just a zero. They got a little healthier for sure. And they've started to shoot the 3-pointer like fine. Like instead of being historically bad, it's been fine. Some nights are better than others. Lonnie Walker has been better than I thought he would be. So we'll see. I mean, it's the they still have a really hard month, but definitely, you win in Milwaukee and Washington. Washington's a playoff team starting the week here. So I mean, you gotta say that Darvin Ham has done a good job of righting the ship, and AD has been enormous. And I know people are going to start talking about AD for MVP. That's going to be I'm sure tomorrow when I get the rundown for various shows, it's going to be AD MVP is going to be on the rundown. But, he's playing the best basketball in the league right now. So, you got to give him that. He was just player of the week. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it again here tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, MVP. That's probably for another day and stuff. But the one thing with the Lakers too, when we just mentioned about Westbrook here, I think what's happened is that it takes a little bit more pressure off the front office, where we've always talked about, all right, Westbrook and the 2-1s, right? Westbrook and what can that get you? Where now maybe it's not about Westbrook, maybe it's about Patrick Beverley, maybe it's about Kendrick Nunn. What can $18 million and maybe it's a protected one here. It makes things a little bit more manageable as far as if they want to go out and become buyers here.
Thing I'll say about AD, I was never in favor of trading him. And look, if they had gotten to 4-18 and he was struggling, I would have had maybe a different opinion, but I've never been in favor of trading him. Just like last year, when people were talking about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I was never in favor of trading them. And it's why, like right now, I say, as frustrating as it is for the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard, not that they would trade him, but like they have to stick with him because ultimately the talent is so rare that you have to stick with it. And by the way, if AD goes back into the tank, or if he sprains his ankle this week coming up and misses a month, it's the reason why you stay in it, because the talent level is such that you just have to stay invested. It's like if you believe in a stock that a couple of bad
Brooklyn.
quarters,
it's like Brian. It's like Brooklyn with Durant. Yeah. I mean, the talent level between for players like Kevin Durant at that level, and there's so much. It's such difference. I mean, I know we're getting off track a little bit, but you watch the Dallas New York game from Saturday afternoon is a great example of that. Like Dallas has Luka, New York doesn't. Right. Like when you have a player like that can elevate everyone else around you and still go out and give you 35 points. I mean, like everybody is starving for one of those players on your roster.
Yeah. And that was the Knicks, by the way, as bad as they looked on Saturday, they came back and beat the Cavs in a good win tonight. But, you mentioned the Nets. The Nets are on this homestand. And, they came in today's game, won 3 games in a row. Like all of a sudden it was like, well, wait a minute, it can change your whole outlook. Now, Celtics came in today and knocked them off that perch. But, you're 1 week, you're always kind of 1 week away in the NBA from having your outlook changed. And so, we'll see a week from now, and the Lakers are on the road for the rest of this week. We'll see where they are. We'll see where they're at the end. To me, I've said this before, but I'm circling January 1st. The Lakers have 13 road games this month. They've played 2, and they're 2-0 in them. And the home games they have in between road trips are really hard. And they're on the road for Christmas, and they're really. I've never quite seen, Bobby. Typically, when you're on the road for Christmas, they let you come home right after you're on the road for Christmas. Lakers go on the road for Christmas and stay out for a week. Like they're on the road for Christmas and New Year's. It's kind of rude. So we'll see where they are January 1st. If January 1st they're in position, okay. I wanted to talk tonight also about the Atlanta Hawks. Now, we had planned to talk about the Hawks before this news story came from The Athletic today about Trae Young and Nate McMillan, which we'll talk about in a second. But the reason I want to talk about the Hawks with you, Bobby, was because they're a team that we don't pay much attention to. They have star players, but they don't get the high profile, and they're doing fine. They're in 4th place in the East. But I was aware that there was some internal struggles that were going on there. And one of the things was, Trae Young, they trade for DeJounte Murray in the offseason. And the concept is that he's going to now share the ball a little bit with Murray. That Murray brings defense. Murray takes the pressure off, because Trae Young was awesome last year. He made the All NBA team, and super high usage rate. And so the idea was, let's take some stress off of him. They bring DeJounte Murray in, and for the first month, 6 weeks of the season, his usage rate was even higher than it was last year. No, he and Murray had some great games, but it wasn't the kind of flow that they were looking for. And they've won games. I mean, they've never been in a bad way, and now they've got injuries. But I know that Nate McMillan, from what I was told, Nate McMillan was trying to get Trae to share the ball a little bit more. And they had, from what I was told, there was a moment in a film session where they kind of got into it a little bit. But Bobby, film sessions are prone for that. I heard about it. I didn't do anything. I just sort of let it go. And then we have this report from The Athletic from Shams Charania and Sam Amick about how Friday Nate McMillan and Trae Young got into a disagreement over shoot-around participation, and then he didn't come to the game, and they ruled him out with a shoulder injury. They played the Nuggets. I think that was Friday night.
Yeah.
They played the Nuggets. They don't have John Collins. He had an ankle injury. They don't have DeAndre Hunter. I can't remember what his injury is, but they're both going to be out for a couple of weeks. I think, is it hip injury? I don't know. Trae Young misses, shoulder injury. They list him as out. Also, Justin Holiday's in health and safety. They're missing 4 rotation players. They play the Nuggets, who have been on a pretty good run, and they play one of their best games of the year. Now, Bogdanovich came back from injury. He hadn't played all year. He didn't play well, but they played through one of their best games of the year. The ball's moving around. AJ Griffin, who's there, they picked him in the first round last year. Adrian Griffin's son. He's, by the way, looked pretty good. I'm sorry, I'm filibustering here, Bobby. He has the best game he's had so far. DeJounte Murray has a great game. Their spirit is great. Everybody's happy. They get a big win over the Nuggets with nobody there. And so Nate McMillan comes out today and says the reason that Trae Young didn't play, wasn't there on Friday, was because of a miscommunication. So what do we make of this situation in Atlanta at this point? Again, they're in 4th place.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, if they were 10-14, I would think let's raise the red flag, but they're in 4th place. They're in top 10 in the league in offensive and defensive efficiency. They've gotten, and you've got injuries right now, to, as you said, Collins and Hunter. You've gotten great production out of AJ Griffin. I mean, I think he's made Bogdanovic expendable, if he's not already expendable there. As far as with the wing, I think the interesting thing with Trae, 2nd in the league in shot attempts, right? And having a career year low in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage.
Yeah. He's having his worst shooting season of his career. And by the way, their 3-point shooting is terrible as a team.
Yep.
It's like bottom 3 in the league as a team. Which it's ask the Lakers. It's hard to compete when you can't hit threes. And so yeah, I mean, well, this is goes back to what we just talked about with Anthony Davis. Like you've got a guy this good, his a 6-footer's value skill set is different than a big man, but in terms of like, it's harder to find a guy like Anthony Davis and his Trae Young, but still we're talking about a guy who's all NBA. There's a reason, Trae Young feels emboldened because the team has functioned around him. And so he is going to push back and he is going to want to do things his way. But he's an incredibly valuable player. So there's no doubt that there's some stuff that's got to be worked out between the head coach and the star, Bobby. And the thing is that the last, he had issues with the last coach, at Lloyd Pierce. So, if you're the Hawks, you're like, man, they're so deep. They've, one of the things that they have done so well to build this team is draft.
Yeah, really good. Really
and
good.
AJ Griffin is another example of their draft. And so they've got a lot of depth. They are upwardly mobile. They can trade some pieces. It's, I don't think it should be a super alarm, but it is something to be watchful of a team that has a chance to make some noise in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, their schedules have been a little bit soft. I think, they've gotten Houston twice, which they lost to, New York twice, Detroit twice, or Chicago. I think they've got OKC is their next, and they come east up, or northeast with New York and Brooklyn here. It's funny, if you would have said to me that it was John Collins, it was the guy that, didn't show up or didn't come, then I'd be like, yeah, I get it. He's averaging a career low in field goal attempts, and he's basically been phased out of the offense here. But I mean, I'm not, as I said, I'm not ready to kind of sound the alarms here, but Trae Young is a polarizing figure, right? But as we talked about when we started the show, players like him will win you playoff series. Players like him will win you playoff games here. And, when you give a player a $209 million 5-year max contract, it comes with the expectations now of you becoming that leader, right? I don't care that you're only in the 5th year, year 5, as far as being in this leader, you are the guy now, right? That comes with it.
Yeah. And he's not just be frank, he's not the easiest guy to play with. He can be a tough guy to play with. And we've heard that before. So, yeah, and I do think internally they recognize that their record is okay, but their record for the schedule they played should be better. I think that they are a little bit worried about where they'll be in another month. It also depends on the health of these players. I mean, you're missing a couple of starters. John Collins has been rumored to have been traded 15 different times in the last
he's like the Brooke Lopez when I had Brooke in New Jersey and Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think we traded him about 5 times. And I think John Collins, he's like the guy, whenever I'm rating my trade guide, I'm just going to start just John Collins every year, right? Makes it easy for me.
Right. I mean, I wonder how many teams John Collins has been linked to. It's at least a third of the league, if not more. But yeah, I do think that that's a situation that bears watching. Another situation that bears watching. I want to know from your perspective. We've talked a bit on the pod about the issues that the Warriors are facing with what to do with their roster. And to me, I think this is a really interesting case study, a real front office case study. So the Warriors, their home road split is kind of crazy, and you just can't believe that they're going to continue to be this team all year. They start this week. They've crawled into the top 6, but they're still 2-10 on the road, 11-1 at home. And one of the reasons is because their bench has been so poor. We talked on the podcast last week about James Wiseman going to Santa Cruz and not really impressing in the G League. Bontemps brought up the idea. He said this before about, whether they should consider trading him for a guy like Kelly Olynyk or something. So how do you, as a guy with so much front office experience, how do you judge and how do you evaluate what to do with that team, especially as you look over in the Eastern Conference and you see Boston and you see Milwaukee and those teams playing so well, and know that that's your competition too, not just the teams in the West?
Yeah, I mean, the big question for me, and that I've written for Golden State is like, are we comfortable selling low on James Wiseman if it helps us now, which is in the Steph Curry timeline, but maybe hurts us later in the future, right? Like that's kind of the $1 million question. I think the big thing with Golden State, Brian, and this, like they don't make changes during the season. They don't make regular season changes, and of course, when you're rolling, in between 2014 and 2019, you don't need to make changes during the regular season. Like you made the D'Angelo Russell, Andrew Wiggins trade, in February of 2020, but you were basically headed towards the lottery. Like that was, it was a basketball move, but it was a move basically for
they were looking to trade Russell from the day they signed him, even though they denied it.
No, I totally agree with you there. But yeah, so they don't like to move to make, from a change standpoint, they don't make regular season deals here. And that's the big thing with Wiseman is like, he's probably your trade asset, right? Like when you look at, Curry's off the board, you're not going to do anything with Thompson and Green, I don't think. Jordan Poole's got the poison pill restriction, which is incredibly hard to trade. Andrew Wiggins can't be traded. And he's coming off that game for, I think, at 36 the other night against Houston.
He's having an incredible year shooting the three. He's like shooting 44 something. I don't have it in front of me. 40 some mid% from three. He was 8 of 11, I think. 8 of 10, 8 of 11 on three that night.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a domino effect here. I mean, then you're basically kind of staring at your younger players, and with Kuminga and Moody and Wiseman, DiVincenzo, who's on he's got a player option for next year here. So basically, like Wiseman, based on where we are right now, would certainly signal to be the odd man out, right? Not part of the rotation. He's bouncing around Santa Cruz here, but as I said, like if you figure like, the upside to him is not there, and we can go out and get 1 or 2 players that can help us win a championship now, that's the risk, right? Like that's the risk that you have to kind of weigh there. And I don't think you have to, I mean, I get it. Like you're always going to say like, well, we could have had LaMelo Ball. We could have had Tyrese Halliburton here. Like at the end of the day, like who cares? Like that's for us to debate. Like that's for us to talk about. I think if you're Bob Myers, your track record is your track record, right? Like, yeah, like everyone misses in the draft here. And if James Wiseman is, it's a lesson for down the road. Like, what did you do? What was the I mean, he basically evaluated him on 6 or 7 games, right? Like that was
and like individual workouts. I compare him to Darko because he was like an individual workout demon.
Yeah, he was Brian. He was down here in Miami playing pickup with all these guys. John Wall was part of that group, and you were able to kind of get a backdoor view of kind of where he was, and there was appeal. Like you could see why the potential was there.
Not only that, wasn't there a rule at the time that the players could only do so many certain numbers of workouts because of COVID? Like that's one of the things we looked back at the 2020 draft at our pod that came out last Friday, and Friday through today I heard from a handful of teams because the lottery is a bit of a mess. Of course Bontemps slayed a couple teams, and then like he slayed Killian Hayes, and Killian Hayes went out that night and had Thursday night after we recorded the pod, and like Detroit, I don't remember who they beat, but Killian Hayes,
Dallas.
Dallas.
Yeah, I think he had 14 in overtime.
He's hitting like dagger jumpers, and like McMahon is texting Bontemps, Killian Hayes got something to say to you. Well, the pod wasn't even out yet, Killian Hayes got something to say to you. But I heard from a number of teams that, I don't think they were a little annoyed in our evaluation. And they just said, the 2020 draft, like you just got to understand the COVID year, like the evaluation cycle was messed up. And, I was talking to one team that, drafted in the lottery, and, they didn't hit the ball of the park, and they were like, yeah, we probably got it wrong, but you got to understand, like, we were so limited. And like, I remember like hearing that there were teams, wisely, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was some rule about how many workouts you could have, either teams could come in, and like there were like scandalous, like secret
You
secret
basically
workouts.
had to, and you had to get tested to go to these workouts. I mean, I knew
Yeah.
guys, friends of mine, who would like they'd be on their way to Memphis to go see someone work out, and they test positive for COVID, right? And
Yeah.
now you're like, yeah, there was mass chaos with, and I think you look at like guys that like Tyrese Maxey, right? Guys that got
Yeah.
drafted in the 20s there.
Yeah, there's a lot of
You
guys in
know,
the back half of the draft
Desmond
that weren't
Bain, right?
performing.
I mean, was
Yes.
he in that draft?
Yes, he was.
There
30th.
were,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody misses here. Like, I mean, it's just part of it. The draft is part of it.
So the thing about Wiseman is that he makes a big salary as a number 2 pick in his 3rd year. He's making over 10 million, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So
you could get a 14, $15 million guy
yeah,
back.
it cost him a lot of
might
money.
Might cost you another 100 million, but
is Kelly Olynyk worth another 60?
hey, Kelly Oubre was back in 2020, right?
That's true. Yeah, and a first. Yeah, so it's a real, I think the thing that you are worried about if you're the Warriors is you trade James Wiseman to Detroit or Utah or whatever, and a year from now he's averaging 18, 8, and a block and a half a game, and the guy you traded him for is your 8th man. That's what you're worried about. And they hedged this so well to get these lottery picks. I can see why they don't want to let go. I get it. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, in the perfect world, what was supposed to happen here is that Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody were going to be your next wave, right? That was the next foundation. Yeah. Like, you didn't have to go out and make trades or use your tax mid-level exception or some of these other things here, that they were going to be your reliable bench presence. And, when they went out after, I remember when Bob Myers talked after they lost to Memphis in the playing game, like, he says, like, I need to go out and like fix the bench. Like, I need veterans. Like, we need to like, and he went out and did that. I mean, I wouldn't count Gary Payton as that. I mean, Gary Payton was waived right before training camp. And then re-signed. He was basically waived because his contract was going to become guaranteed. But they did go out and got the Otto Porters of the world here, and they thought that with that Moody and Kuminga and eventually Wiseman would be your, those would be your next, they're never going to be, the next Curry or Thompson, but they're going to be an inexpensive fix for your bench.
Speaking of Curry, did you see this video that went viral here Sunday night of him making 5 full court shots in a row? Did you see that, Bobby?
I didn't see it. No.
Well, you will. It's him in an empty gym, and there's a ball rack next to him, and he throws 5 consecutive shots from like basically baseline to baseline, and he makes 5 in a row. And on the 5th one, he goes running out of the gym. Can't believe he made 5 in a row. And it is very believable looking video. It's fooled tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people by the time we do this pod. By tomorrow morning, it may have fooled millions of people. It's a very, very well done edit. And I guess I can't say for 1 billion%, but the guy who posted the initial clip, although Steph has posted it now too, but the guy who posted the initial clip is the same guy who posted the clips back in the spring and summer about those Tom Brady. Remember those Tom Brady,
yeah.
With the he was throwing the ball into the jugs gun or whatever.
Yes.
And there was like some Tom Brady thing where supposedly a drone caught him making a hole in one. It was the same guy who posted those. So and he's a video director and editor by trade. So, just sorry to be the wet blanket reporter. But anyway, has nothing to do with the Warriors bench problem, but um, it was. I mean, if there's anybody you could believe could hit 5 straight full court shots, it would be Steph. But they should have just stuck with 2. If they stuck with 2, you'd have been like, "Oh my God, he made 2 in a row." That you could see. But when they went to 5, anyway. It's time to knock that new business idea out of the park with Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Forget the off-season work. Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether you're selling warm-ups or wall hangers, it's time to start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of businesses worldwide. With Shopify, you'll customize your online store to your brand. Discover new customers and build the relationships that create those die-hard fans. Shopify fields all the sales channels to grow winning business. From an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform, even across social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And thanks to 24/7 support and free on-demand business courses, Shopify is on your team every step of the way. It's how every minute new sellers around the world score their first sale with Shopify, and you can too. Shopify is the secret to becoming a business champion by making it simple for anyone to sell their products anywhere, taking the guesswork out of selling. When you're ready to take your winning idea to the world, team up with Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Try out Shopify for free today and start selling anywhere. It's the best time of the year. Football season is in full swing. Basketball and hockey have returned, and nothing beats seeing your favorite team live. Make up for lost time. Go enjoy a game. Vivid Seats, the official ticketing partner of ESPN, is offering you $10 off your first $100 ticket purchase with code HOOP. That's code HOOP, HOOP. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats, life happens live.
Now it's time for Hoop Collective Trivia.
Before we go, there's something going on in the league right now that almost nobody is talking about in the media. And it's so strange to me. I'm 20 years into my NBA coverage career now. And so I have seen 3 major collective bargaining agreement deals, and one that went into lockout. So that was fun for all of us. And there's a CBA deadline to strike a deal in 10 days. 10 days from this pod comes out, December 15th. CJ McCollum and I were talking about it. He's like, yeah, everything's kind of going fine. I wasn't expecting to give me a blow-by-blow update, president of the Players Union. And I've talked to some people on the league side, and they go, yeah, we don't anticipate any problems. And I'm like, there's always problems. So it's not like a huge issue if the both sides have until December 15th to let the other side know that they're going to opt out of the deal. And so it's kind of like a deadline. It doesn't mean that if they don't have a deal by December 15th, that they're going to have a strike or a lockout. And it's not even for next year. It's for the year after next year, the 2024-25 season. But it's interesting, nothing is said. And then the reason I'm even bringing it up now, Bobby, is that this last week, this memo goes out to the executives detailing next year's scheduling. And it has an option in there to alter the schedule a little bit for the mid-season tournament, which clearly they are negotiating right now. And I would think that if they don't get an agreement by December 15th, a mid-year agreement now, they're not going to be able to schedule them. They can't come to an agreement in July and then schedule the mid-season tournament for December. It doesn't work. So I just want to know your side of it, having been on the other side of it. Should we be talking about this? Is this something to be quote unquote worried about or paid attention to? Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think a couple things there. I mean, I think from the scheduling standpoint, I mean, this is the time of year right now when teams are starting to send their schedules in for next year, as far as their building availability dates. And I wouldn't be surprised if the league is basically telling them these dates are going to be need to be held open here for that. I went back and looked at what happened in 2016, right? Like basically the current CBA that we're under is basically like an amendment to the path, to the pro.
Sort
I
of
mean,
a bastard.
it's probably one of like thank God. I mean, like, because 2011 was we could do another pod about 2011. Like 2011, which was the lockout year, was, and I remember because I remember talking with Andy Ellisberg from the Heat about this, and we laughed. And like basically the agreement came about. And then like we had a call with the league. They told us what the rules were. Like, okay, and in about 3 hours, you guys can go out and sign guys. And we're like, what just happened? We're like, what just happened? You know, because it was in like right before Christmas time. But back in
not only that, they completely renovated the luxury tax system.
Oh, well,
it wasn't like, okay, we got a deal, standard operating procedure. They changed everything.
Well, everything, the hard cap. I mean, when you are a team that we were a team that in New Jersey that was always under the salary cap, and then we go from the salary cap to becoming a luxury tax team the following summer. So then you're basically playing catch up, right? Because you don't think like you were going to be in that position here. But I went back and looked at 2016, which is kind of we're in the same situation. And what happened back then was, they moved the opt-out date, the December 15th opt-out date, to January 13th. And the agreement in principle was reached right around 15th, 16th of December. I remember I was in church when a team sent me the term sheets for that. And it basically in my car with a flashlight reading like the actual term sheets of the agreement here. So the reason why the it's pushed back to January 13th, although there is let's say a principle and an agreement, is they have to ratify the deal from both sides standpoint. So I think when you look at it, they don't want to opt out and then kind of leave themselves exposed. So I wouldn't be surprised if they push this back a little bit, and then within the next few weeks we hear, maybe next 10 days, that there's some type of agreement in principle on the key terms and everything.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's been like this feeling, and some people have articulated this, that, oh man, especially with, player empowerment and missed games and whatever, wait till the next CBA. The owners are going to go for blood. I mean, we don't have an agreement, and I'm not sitting in on the meetings, but that isn't the vibe that I've gotten at all. I haven't gotten the vibe that there's blood at all. I mean, one of the things that the midseason tournament is going to be the headline grabber, but one of the big things that's going to be a discussion point is, are they going to lift the age limit and put the age limit back to 18? And there's been this long running back and forth there. The give and take there is that the league, if they're going to admit 18-year-olds, the league wants to do way more extensive medical testing on players, because, the idea is that they won't have been able to watch them in either in the G League or at college. And so they'll have less information. And of course, the players union doesn't want players to sort of be maybe harmed by like somebody finding some, gene that is, or, some predilection to, ACL tear, he lands 13% heavier on his instep, and so therefore he's got a 9% chance more of tearing his ACL. And I'm making this all up, so red flag, so that's what they've sort of been fighting over for years now. So that's going to kind of be interesting. But like, I'm not, and I don't know if you are either, I'm not getting any vibe of like gouging out the eyes here. So I do think there's a chance that there could be an agreement. I'm just not hearing much about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think what you'll probably see is certainly the age limit is probably the central focus. And as you mentioned, the play-in, I think you'll see maybe some tweaks to luxury tax. Maybe the brackets get expanded a little bit. I think one thing to keep an eye on is the extension rules are going to be possibly changed, where, you're not restricted as far as, it's basically like the Zach LaVine rule, right? Where you're kind of, they were kind of caught in that place where they can only extend him for 120% because he was on such a good team friendly deal, similar to what Jaylen Brown is in Boston, where maybe you can extend him for 30% of the cap for that season, of the first year of that. That would, there's no harm there. I mean, the goal is to, player retention as far as staying with teams. And I think you'll see more tweaks in that realm. But I don't think it's probably going to be another amendment to kind of what these current rules are right now.
I'm already bracing for the hot takes. Cause look, maybe they don't get it done, but they're clearly preparing for the midseason tournament to be there. And, it'll probably be something like the G League is doing right now. So right now the G League teams are playing games, and then it sets up the seeding for the G League showcase, which is in 2 weeks in Vegas?
Yeah, 19th. Yep.
3 weeks, I guess, 2.5 weeks. And then they play a tournament there, and then they start kind of anew in the second half. That will be what happened in the NBA. I think the concept is you'll play the games and they'll sort of count on the midseason tournament scoreboard and also the regular season scoreboard. And then it'll set the terms for the midseason tournament, which I don't know if it'll be played at a neutral site or it'll be played in these sites, but you won't know the games, and there'll be a certain element of not knowing a certain portion of the schedule. And the idea is, I've compared to Bobby, if you have a better comparison, you remember that the preseason NIT in college basketball used to kind of be a thing.
Yeah.
And it would culminate in like a Final Four at the Garden, right? Or did it always get played at the Garden?
They always at the Garden. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was, and teams, when they would win it, they would hang a banner. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying they hung it at Duke, but there were places they would hang a banner. And now you may say, well, then why did it go away? If it was so, well, that's a good point, because ultimately teams felt that they could do their own thing at their own buildings and whatever. And so, but that's kind of what I kind of think it is. Like the preseason NIT counted. It counted in your standings or in your record and everything like that. And if you won it, you were excited and there was some measure of celebration, and there was some recognition. You would hang a banner, but then your season would move on. And when you get to the end of the season, maybe you made the tournament, maybe you didn't, but hey, we did make the semifinals of the preseason NIT. And so that's kind of what I'm comparing it to. And I just know that if it comes together, Bobby, that people are going to just mock it, and they're going to say it's ridiculous. And I don't even know what the reaction from the players is. I guess that's one of the things that's probably being negotiated right now is what's incentivizing the players. But if it does get done in the next 2.5 weeks, that will be, I think, have the reaction central on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the player standpoint, like if it doesn't screw up like how we basically are operating as is, and then there's a cash component to it, right? Like maybe you can make an extra $1 million if you win this, or $2 million here. Then I'm thinking like, well, what? All I'm doing is playing the same amount of games, and
get more money,
and I'm getting more money to it, right? So what is it to me,
Right, and it might be something else for the league to sell in terms of a property.
Yep.
So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Until you told me about them pushing it back until January, I remember that there was, after the 2011 lockout, there was almost no drama in 2016. And we knew that for months there would be no drama. And here it's been almost less than that. It hasn't even been a discussion point. Like, I've been in touch with people who are heavily involved in it. Yep. And I've had full conversations, and these people are like, going to meetings, reading emails, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, obviously it's kept close to the vest because they're sworn to secrecy, but stuff gets out and it's never mentioned. And by the way, I don't even think to ask, and they don't think to bring it up. So I don't know. We'll see. I would say this: if there's a CBA that's agreed to, whether it's by December 15th or January 15th, should never be taken for granted.
Oh, I lived
peaceful.
Through it.
Yeah.
I lived through 99.
Oh, did you?
98, yeah. 99.
Did you get your salary docked those years?
I did in 2000. We had furlough Fridays.
Yeah, never fun. So all right, well, thanks, Bobby, for coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you to Jackson for staying up. Jackson's pulling double duty. He's doing NFL stuff on Sundays and this podcast, so we appreciate it, Jackson, and we will talk to you guys later this week.